Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you're looking for the fastest, most in-depth analysis on the news-moving markets, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we are jumping straight into the pharma sector. Specifically, a regulatory shockwave that hits Sanofi's multiple sclerosis pipeline right before the end of the year.
That's right. We're talking about their lead MS candidate, Tolebrutinib, and a surprise ruling that has really changed the game for Sanofi's near-term growth story.
So our mission today is to give you the complete picture. We're going to unpack this surprising denial from the FDA, the complete response letter, and really get into the science behind the drug.
And then, crucially, what this all means financially for Sanofi's stock and, their strategy going forward.
Right. So where do we start? This was a big blow.
It was. You have to start with the action itself. The FDA issued what's called a complete response letter, or a CRL.
And that's for the new drug application for Tolebrutinib.
Exactly. And it's for a very specific type of MS, the non-relapsing secondary progressive multiple sclerosis indication, or NRS-PMS.
A CRL is basically a hard no for now, isn't it? It means the FDA just isn't ready to approve the drug with the data they have.
It's a major roadblock. And management's reaction was, let's just say it was pretty telling.
What did they say?
They were very critical. They called the CRL a significant and meaningful change in direction from what the agency had told them before.
Wow. You don't often hear a company talk about their regulator that way?
Not with language that strong, no. It suggests they felt completely blindsided by this.
So what does this do to the timeline? They had a PDUFA date coming up, didn't they?
They did. December 28, 2025. That's off the table now.
And the new timeline is?
That's the problem. It's vague. The FDA says the review will go well beyond that date, and Sanofi is basically telling the market not to expect any real guidance until the end of the first quarter of 2026.
So at least a year of deep uncertainty for what was supposed to be a core growth driver.
A year of clouds, yes.
Okay, let's get into the drug itself. This was positioned as a huge deal, wasn't it? Specifically because it targeted this area of immense unmet need.
The unmet need here is, it's massive. You can't overstate it. NRS-PMS is the form of MS where patients aren't having those classic relapses anymore.
But they're still getting worse.
They're getting progressively worse. We're talking about severe, irreversible disability, piling up fatigue, cognitive issues, trouble walking. And until now, there have been zero, and I mean zero, approved treatments for this specific group.
So this wasn't just a slightly better version of an old drug. This was meant to fill a complete void.
A huge gap.
What made this particular drug, this BTK inhibitor, seem like it could be the one to do it?
It's all about the mechanism. Tolebrutinib is an oral brain-penetrant Bruton's tyrosine kinase inhibitor.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, most MS drugs work on inflammation out in the body, in the periphery. Tolebrutinib was designed to do something different. It was engineered to cross the blood-brain barrier.
To get right into the central nervous system.
Exactly. To target what's called smoldering neuroinflammation inside the brain itself. And that smoldering is what many now believe is the real engine driving that long-term disability.
That makes a ton of sense clinically. You're going after the root cause of the progression.
Mm-hmm.
So what did the data look like? The Hercules trial seemed pretty positive.
It did on the surface. The Hercules data showed it delayed what's called 6-month confirmed disability progression, or CDP, by 31% compared to placebo.
And a 31% delay in getting worse sounds pretty significant for these patients.
It's a highly relevant clinical win, absolutely.
So if the efficacy looked good, why the CRL? This is where it gets confusing.
This is where the story gets really complicated, and I think this is precisely why the FDA got so concerned about the safety data. See, Sanofi had run 2 totally separate phase 3 trials, Gemini 1 and 2.
And those were for the more common relapsing form of MS.
Correct. And those failed.
Failed how?
They just didn't show the drug was any better than the comparator teriflunomide at reducing the annualized relapse rate. So Sanofi had already thrown in the towel on that indication.
So you have this mixed picture. A win in one area, a failure in another.
Exactly. And when you have mixed results like that, a regulator is going to apply maximum scrutiny to any potential problems. In this case, that was the safety cloud that has been hanging over this drug for years.
So the efficacy data just wasn't strong enough to overcome the safety questions? Was it purely a safety issue then?
It seems to have been the main driver. The FDA had actually put a partial clinical hold on the trials way back in June 2022
Wow.
because of reported cases of drug-induced liver injury.
Okay, how bad was that liver risk in the actual trial? trials?
Well, in the Hercules trial, you saw liver enzyme elevations over 3 times the normal limit in about 4% of people on the drug versus just 1.6% on placebo.
That's a noticeable difference.
It is. And a small but very alarming group, about 0.5%, had huge spikes, over 20 times the upper limit of normal.
And there was a death, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. One patient died from complications after a liver transplant. Now, to be fair, that happened before they implemented tighter liver monitoring in the trials.
But still, a patient death linked even indirectly to liver issues. That's a huge red flag for the FDA.
It tells you everything you need to know about why they're pumping the brakes and demanding more safety data, even for a drug that could help so many people.
All right, let's pivot to the financial impact. Sanofi shares fell. How bad was the damage for a company this big?
The stock dropped about 5% right after the news, which added to what was already a pretty rough year. They were down nearly 16% year to date.
But 5% isn't a total collapse.
No, and this is the key point for investors. Analysts estimated that Tolebrutinib only represented about 4% of Sanofi's total valuation.
So the market had already decided this was a risky bet.
It had been heavily discounted for a while because of that safety cloud and mixed trial results. The reaction was almost a sigh of relief that it wasn't worse.
I know they have to do an impairment test on the asset. What does that actually mean for their bottom line?
It's standard accounting. They'll take a write-down on the intangible asset value of the drug, which will show up in their Q4 earnings. But, and this is important, the company was very clear this will not impact their core business net income or their 2025 guidance.
So it's a one-time accounting thing, not a fundamental threat to the business.
Exactly. The market sees it that way, too.
So if Tolebrutinib's on the sidelines, where does Wall Street look now inside Sanofi's pipeline?
The focus has completely shifted. It's all about the next wave of catalysts. People are now looking very closely at another MS candidate called frexalimab and a big immunology asset, amlitelimab.
And we're expecting data from those soon.
First half of 2026. So this becomes a pivot play for investors.
And the CRL, this is just a U.S. issue for now, right? It's not a global rejection.
That's a great point. It's primarily a U.S. setback. The drug actually has provisional approval in the United Arab Emirates, and it's still under review in the EU.
So there are other smaller paths to market.
Diminish, for sure, but they're not completely blocked globally.
If you zoom out, this whole story feels like it's part of a bigger trend. A drug for a high unmet need gets shot down. It feels like regulatory scrutiny is just getting more and more intense.
Oh, absolutely. The cost of innovation is sky high. You look at the overall drug pipeline right now, and something like 88% of it is specialty drugs.
And they are expensive.
Incredibly. Nearly half of the drugs coming down the pike are projected to cost over $500,000 a year or per treatment.
$500,000, that's just a staggering number.
It is. So when you put a price tag like that on a new drug with a complex safety profile, the bar for approval from the FDA, it just goes through the roof.
They have to be sure the benefit justifies not just the risk, but that enormous cost.
Precisely. Flawless data is basically the new minimum requirement.
Okay, before we wrap, it's time for our speculative trade idea segment. And a reminder to everyone, this is not financial advice. But let's brainstorm a strategy based on this pressure cooker environment of high risk and high cost.
Right, you have this dual pressure, regulators demanding perfect safety and payers, insurance companies trying to control costs.
Yeah.
That creates an interesting dynamic you can potentially trade on.
All right, lay it out for us.
I'd call it a safety cost arbitrage pair trade.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are we shorting? What are we betting against?
The short position would be on an ultra-high WAC gene therapy manufacturer. WAC is the wholesale acquisition cost, the sticker price. We're talking about treatments that cost upwards of $4 million for a single dose.
$4 million, wow. And the rationale for shorting them?
It's simple. The extreme cost makes them incredibly vulnerable. Regulators will be extra tough, and payers will put up huge walls, like strict prior authorizations. Any little setback or even just slow uptake could crater the stock.
So we're betting on the risk side of that high risk, high reward equation. What's the other side of the pair trade, the long position?
You go long on a major manufacturer of recently launched high-impact biosimilars.
So the generic versions of blockbuster biologic drugs.
Exactly. Think of the companies making alternatives for drugs like ustekinumab or tocilizumab. The logic here is pure cost necessity.
Explain that.
Biologics make up almost 40% of net drug spending in the U.S. Biosimilars can cost 30% less. Payers and hospital systems are practically forced to adopt them to control their budgets.
So it's a guaranteed volume play.
It's a much safer path to sustain revenue. You're trading the high-wire act of a multi-million-dollar gene therapy for the steady, predictable demand for a cheaper alternative, a classic hedge.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener?
I think the key takeaway from the Tolebrutinib story is that it's less about Sanofi's specific situation and more about the rising tide of regulatory risk for all novel, expensive drugs.
Even for ones that address a huge unmet need, like NRS-PMS, the bar is just getting higher for everyone.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. It does. What does it mean when a drug that received breakthrough therapy designation, which is supposed to speed things up, gets a CRL like this? What does that signal for the dozens of other high-risk, high-reward drugs coming down the pipeline, especially the ones on an accelerated approval pathway?
It seems like the regulatory bar is being raised in real time, and the market is having to adjust on the fly. A powerful thought.
Indeed.
And remember, this entire deep dive is for educational purposes only. It is absolutely not financial advice.
Please do engage with the Talk Tickers community. We'd love to hear your thoughts on where Sanofi's pipeline goes from here.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.